I'm excited about this episode of the Elite Recruiter Podcast. I have my special guest, Michael Pietrack, with me. And Michael Pietrack is what I call a big biller. When we talk about big biller, it's not just hey, I had a great year, and then after that, consistently, year after year, he's like hit or close to the $1 million mark. His personal billings are at $14 million. And to top that off, he's also a best-selling author. So I'm excited to have him on the podcast to share some of the tips, some of the knowledge, and also talk about being an author. So welcome to the podcast, Mike.
Benjamin, thank you so much. I'm very excited about this.
So before we get started,
Mhm.
the first question I ask every guest is, how did you even get started in the recruiting space?
Oh, well, it's I don't know how interesting a story it is, but it's my story. So I was a baseball player in college, and when I was done playing, I really didn't know what to do with my life. Um, Ever since I was a T-baller, my dream was to be a major leaguer, you know. So now that that dream wasn't going to happen, I had to think of something else. So I just got into coaching, and eventually I worked my way up to the recruiting coordinator at New Mexico State. And at the height of my career, I made $10,000, was living in the dorms. And when I thought about, what kind of prospect that is for a husband, I said, I got to get a real job. And so with no work experience, I moved back to Colorado where I live now. And I saw an advertisement for a recruiter at a search firm. I was like, hey, well, I can do that. So I applied and I almost didn't take the job, but I'm really glad that I did. And yeah, the rest is history.
I love that you are actually a recruiter without realizing what the recruiting world is.
But it's totally different in baseball. So in baseball, you're trying to project what a player would do. And so when early on in my recruiting career, I thought that's what it was. Oh, well, this guy has all these transferable skills. It's more about what have they done, what is the exact function they've done, and how can you get them surgically remove them and put them into a new role. So I took some lumps early on.
I think all of us do. It's, when you think of being a recruiter when you're starting off, you're like, oh, I can help this person, I can do that.
Yes.
But at the end of the day, like got hammered into me when I think they almost fired me. They're like, hey, your job is to fill positions. And I'm like, oh, so I can't help everybody.
Exactly right. Yeah.
So before we start jumping into the recruiting stuff, you're also a best-selling author. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. So in January, I launched a book. January 2023, I launched a book. I had no intention to be an author. It really just happened. About 10 years ago, I wrote a poem for my dad that retold this story that he would tell me and my brothers to get us to go to sleep. And then he requested that I kind of keep it going. Like, what was the backstory? And then what happened after? And so for years and years, I would just send him little bits onto this story, and it just grew and grew and grew. But it is a poem. So, it's not for everybody, but it's about overcoming fear. And I think it really relates to the recruiting business because there's all different shapes and sizes of fear. There's fear of failure. Some people have fear of success. Some people fear the unknown. Some people get locked up in their comfort zone and have fear breaking out of that. And so the book is actually a fable. And the reason it was a bestseller, it's the only epic poem that's also a fable. So they're calling it an epic fable. But it's all about overcoming fear, which I think really relates to the recruiting business. A lot of recruiters have bought it, read it, loved it. The audiobook is also a bestseller. So again, it's nothing I intended, but it has a lot of recruiting in it because when you're a recruiter, that's a big part of who you are.
I love that because I'd say fear is one of the things that every recruiter deals with day in and day out.
That's right.
And it keeps a lot of recruiters from being the best recruiter that they could possibly be.
Fear of picking up the phone, fear of rejection, fear of all these things. So it's going to sound stupid for everyone who's listening, but the main character is a little bee. And the reason I chose that was because that was the main character in my dad's story. But at times we feel like a little bee in this great big forest. And so if you've ever felt, like you're a bit lost, this bee has to go through all this adventure overcoming his fear And that really is the recruiting world.
I love that. And I also love that you're doing something also outside of recruiting. Like you're chasing a passion. And that's one thing that we talk about on this podcast a lot is just like, being the best recruiter you could be, helping others, and also like building dreams and passions outside of recruiting too.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So flipping gears,
Yeah.
over $14 million in personal billings. And you
Yeah.
said what, 14 years of being a recruiter?
15 and a half years.
15 and a half. So
Yeah.
almost $1 million a year, which is absolutely incredible.
Thank you.
Now, I know two things that you've talked about before is what we call the BD machine and how you got there, and also the importance of being a niche. Let's start on the BD side of the house.
Yeah.
Talk about that, on how that has helped you become an incredible biller.
Thanks a lot. I would say if anybody is a former athlete that's listening to this, there was this drill in high school basketball called the 3-man weave. Can you picture that? Where you pass and you follow, So the BD machine is really a 3-man weave that I do every week. So one part of the weave is job postings. Okay, we're all looking at job postings, kind of like ambulance chasing. Then there's news leads, and then there is a touch plan. So I'll just talk about those individually. So obviously I'm looking at job postings, but so is every recruiter on the earth. And I always go to the hiring manager with a MPC or a most placeable candidate or impact player to try to get that job order. But then I'm also following the news leads to see if any of that is triggering hiring. And sometimes it is, sometimes I'm early, but at least I'm making that contact. And then a touch plan is once I get a hiring manager or a list of hiring managers that are in my niche, I keep them on a list and I just periodically touch them in some way, whether a call, email, text, or a newsletter, something. And so every week I'm following the job postings, I'm working my touch plan, and I'm also following the news leads every week. So I never stop BD, I never stop marketing. And we all know the Glenn Ross, always be closing. So my whole thing, my mantra is always be marketing. And that segues into the niche part unless you have questions about that.
Yeah, jump right in.
Well, one of the beautiful things about working in a niche is, how I got the idea to really niche my business was sitting in an In-N-Out burger. I'm waiting in this epically long line. And if you look at their menu, it's really simple. You got a burger,
Yep.
a double burger, maybe like animal style if you order off the menu. And I was sitting there in this line and I'm thinking, what would I do if I went up there and started ordering like a chicken sandwich? And I'm like, what is the guy going to do? Is he going to stop the line, go get some chicken patties to fulfill this one order? And as I was thinking about that, I was like, dang, that's what I do on my desk. I have this burger making machine, and then my client says, hey, can you fill this chicken sandwich? And I stop the whole thing to go chase that chicken sandwich, and all the patties that are left over, all the inventory of candidates, I can never reuse them again. So I said, you know what, no more chicken sandwiches, and I'm going to super niche my business. I'm going to have one position that's a burger. Maybe that's an individual contributor. Then I have the double burger, which will go into the BD machine, and then we have the VP or the head of the business. The thing
So
is, go ahead.
I was going to say, before that, like, were you chasing everything on God Green's Earth?
Everything, man. I mean, and the feeling that I had was I went from hero to zero. So like I would fill a position with a client, and then they'd say, hey, can you do this chicken sandwich? And I was like, yeah, of course. I'm an expert in search. And so I would chase it and I wouldn't fill it. And I went from a hero to a zero with that client. And so now I say no to those. But yeah, I mean, I filled positions that I didn't even know what they were. And I hated that feeling.
And then like the current niche that you're in now, like, first of all, what is it? And then how did you get to that niche?
So within a pharmaceutical company, there are many divisions, many departments. There's this one little tight niche between clinical development and sales called medical affairs. So really, right when the drug is about to launch, these people are in the field. They're not salespeople. They're kind of like expert sales support. So like a pharmaceutical sales rep could be have a bachelor's degree in business, but the medical science liaison or the leadership of those people, they're like PharmDs, MDs, or PhDs. So they talk sort of a peer-to-peer level with the physician. So it's been a great niche for me. I feel like we dominate that space. Um, the company that I work for also does contract staffing in medical affairs, so we both do direct and contract staffing in that niche. So it's been a good home for us.
That's awesome. Is your background medical, or did you just like end up in the medical side of things?
No, man, it was so like I remember my first day of training. So I almost work exclusively in oncology, but I
Okay.
remember when the guy who hired me said, okay, sometimes we work in cardiovascular disease, sometimes we work in oncology. And I was like, hold up, what's oncology? And he's like, what? You don't even know what, like, he's like, I hired the wrong guy. I didn't know anything about it. The fact, so I have a master's in English. And the reason I chose English was because it didn't have any math or science in it. And now all I'm doing is science. So I have no background in it. Yeah.
Because I know, like, most of us kind of stumble into recruiting, and then most of us like somehow stumble into our niche too. So it's always fun to find out like how a big biller like yourself ended up in that space.
Yeah. It was, that was the space they wanted to go in. And that's why they hung that advertisement for the recruiter. So it was really luck.
Now, like going back to the BD side of the house, because I know BD
Yeah.
is a hot topic. There's a lot of industries that are, I'd say, hurting this year, and there's other
Yep.
industries that aren't. What are some of the secrets, and what are some of the things that you're doing on the BD side of the house to really, one, get new clients and really stand out above the competition?
Yeah. Good question. Really relevant question. And our industry is hurting too. I would say the total positions that we normally fill, we're at about 40% of those, carrying those over. So our BD machine is struggling to produce. But what I found to be true over the years, there's this book called The Go Giver, and the principles in that book I really follow a lot in my practice. And it talks about your income is a direct reflection of the value that you bring to a market. So if you want to increase your income, increase the value that you bring to the market. So what I've been doing for the last 10 years is doing a lot of videos about interviewing that has really been instrumental in the industry. So I think if you go to the market as a go giver instead of a go getter and a go taker, I think that'll lead to a lot of success. So that's part of what I do is I try to give. You can't outgive what the market will give you. Yeah.
I love that, and it's one of the interesting things that I've been seeing with guests is the guests that are doing well, have their own businesses, are super successful. They're doing something outside of just the cold email, the cold call. They've built like obviously like a farming system that reaps the rewards years down the road.
It's true. You got it. Like no matter what brand, like let's say you're just a recruiter that works at a firm, your firm has a brand, but you as a person have to also create a brand, and that comes through people seeing your face, people seeing your content, people seeing your impact. So one of the other things that we do is every time we make a placement, we post a picture about it. Hey, just helped another person get hired. Just helped another person get hired. So everybody's like, man, that's where to go if I want to get a new job. The other thing that I did that I think is something someone else can duplicate, but it does take time to build, is I created a separate group within LinkedIn, like a discussion group. And the rules of the group is no one else besides me can post in it. So it basically becomes like this secret job board that people are anonymously in, and I'm posting my content and also the new jobs. And every time I get a job, I post a little video about it, a little 1 minute snippet. So they're always seeing me, and they're seeing all these job orders over and over and over and over, which is just a branding uh, machine.
So wait, this is under like a LinkedIn group then, right? That you created?
Yeah, yeah, yep.
And are you only allowing people like in your niche in that group? Is that kind of how it
That's right.
works out? How are
Yes,
you
only.
inviting people?
So on the videos that I put, I always invite people, hey, if you want, please join our private LinkedIn group. A lot of it was word of mouth early on.
Okay.
Um, and when I connect with someone new on LinkedIn, I always tell them about it. Hey, I'm also going to send you an invite here. And I think we have, I don't even know how many people we have in it, but it's got to be 5,000 or so. So, but it,
I've
it took time to grow.
That is like a super weapon that like nobody has actually talked about yet.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been good. The other little niche thing that has been helpful is I grabbed a domain, like a pointer domain that talks about my niche. So I have the medical affairs recruiter and the MSLrecruiter.com.
Okay.
Now I'm not going to name my company this, but when I'm on like when I'm on a discussion with an HR person, they're like, okay, well, tell me about your niche. I say, well, go to the MSL recruiter, and then my bio shows up. Or if I'm trying to get in touch with a really hard to connect with candidate, and I'm telling them, hey, I'm the MSL recruiter, not just one of a bunch. In fact, go to the MSL recruiter. You could read more about my background. It helps solidify what I do, like In-N-Out Burger would.
I love
You
that.
know what you're
And
getting at In-N-Out Burger, right?
yeah, it's one of my favorite places. I can't wait for it to come to the
Me
East
too.
Coast.
Too, man. Pound some In-N-Out Burger.
Every time I'm in California, I have to stop there.
Well, and the line's always long, right?
Oh,
So,
it's insane.
some people are worried about niching. Well, you can't be more niche than having just a burger. I mean, they don't even have anything else. You can't even get a salad there or anything. And their line is out the door. So it's a lot better to do one thing at an extremely excellent level than try to have like a McDonald's menu where you're trying to appease everybody. So that's worked for me.
That is great.
Mhm.
Now, is there any other lessons that you'd love to share of how you got to $14 million in billings in the last 15 years?
I would say speed and accuracy.
Okay.
When you're in a niche, when you're working in a niche, those, the double burger, every one of those calls, if you're recruiting on that, it's a 2-for-1 call. So you're manufacturing time there. You're doing 2 calls in one. When you're routinely filling the same searches, the time in searching becomes diminished because you've already done that search. Maybe you've done that search 5 times already this year, and you're just calling the same people you pojoed last time or presented last time. That helps. The other thing I've done is organize my database to be super fast. So one of the things that ate up a lot of time was grooming roll-up lists to send out a bulk email. Can you guys picture that? So what I did is I said, screw that. I'm going to have master roll-up lists that I can either just sort by state or by title. I have this special titling structure that tells me exactly who the candidate is. And so when I send out a bulk email, the sourcing's done. Now it's just a matter of making the phone calls. So I can get through, let's say it's a 40 potential candidates. I just get that done in one day. Whereas the people I'm competing with are grooming the roll up list and going onto LinkedIn and trying to source all these people, but I'm done. So I can get through more searches quicker. So that's how you increase your billings.
So, real quick, pause right there. Hold that
Yeah.
thought. Your database, you've spent a lot of time perfecting it, sounds like.
Yes. That is, I need to have, if that's not tight, I can't bill what I want to bill.
Any advice to recruiters out there when they're looking at, hey, I feel like a lot of people like their databases are
A
okay
mess.
or a mess.
Yeah.
What advice would you
Yeah.
would you give
Yeah.
to recruiters out there to really get that cleaned up?
There's a few bits of advice. The first thing is find out the week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks in your industry that are completely slow. For me, it's 4th of July week. Thanksgiving week, and the end of the year, just, Christmas to New Year's. Okay. Those weeks spend to your database. Just put your phone on hold. Don't use your phone. Just clean up your database. It'll serve you well, very well. That's number one. What I found is that most people that I've coached, there's an industry that separates maybe two candidates from another. There's a functional level. Obviously, there's a function, but then there's a level. Maybe, this is a double burger. Okay, this is a single burger. Different list. Okay. And then there's some sort of technology or product. So, okay, this is this industry, this is this function and level, but they're an expert in this technology. So the way you set it up is either separate it all by technology, or you separate it all by function, or you separate it by industry, however you do it, or maybe you have multiple lists, but you categorize it so that it's like if you think about like a shoe store and someone comes in and says, hey, I want a pair of white size 13 Nikes, high tops. They can go to the back and pull it out quickly versus just having a mess of a back with shoe boxes and you're looking at each shoe box. So I want to be the guy that can bring those shoes out, the exact pair of shoes they're looking for quickly. And that is all organizing your database.
That's great advice, and I'm actually going to spend my weekend working on my database.
Yeah. It'll pay itself in spades.
So I want to kind of also jump into this question with you. Okay. Now, you're working at a larger firm, right?
Yes. Yeah. I would say the medical affairs company is around a $30 to $40 million search firm.
But you structure everything like it's your own business. Like you own the shop, which I love that. You have to do that for success. How did you flip into that kind of gear to look at this as your own business, even though you're a part of a larger group?
Yeah, it is really, so the way our company is set up is we have 4 service lines. Direct hire, which I head up, is one. It started off as a subsidiary of this big company. And then our big company got bought. So I actually went from owner to employee, which is a harder paradigm shift. But it is hard to keep that owner entrepreneurial mindset when it's not completely yours anymore. Okay. As a team sports guy, one of the things I love is, it's my at bat, but we still are trying to accomplish something bigger as a team. So if I have all these good stats, but our team is losing, that's not good. And so what I really try to do is keep my eyes peeled for opportunities for other people on other business units so that we can be the yes to really everybody in our department. But I think ownership is a mindset that every recruiter should have. Whether they have a sales territory or a roll-up list that they're calling, treat it like it's their own business, and you'll have a lot of success.
Awesome. Now, before I jump into some of the quick fire questions for the podcast, is there anything else that you'd love to share about whether the BD machine, niching, or how you've hit some of your success?
No, man, I'm ready for these quick fire ones. I'm excited about these. Just go ahead.
All right. I might add a few more with you. So just watch out. Advice to a brand new recruiter that's starting off in 2023, like brand new to the industry. What advice would you give to them to become successful?
2 bits of advice. The best advice I ever got was someone said, burn your boats. So what that means is, to make a long story short, there's like this, someone came to America on all these ships, and the first thing they did was burn the boats. So they had to make it work there. There was no plan B to come back. And the moral of the story is, if you have a plan B, there will be a time that you'll use it. Because invariably it is going to be hard, and the first year, of course, is the hardest. And in 2023, and during this recession or whatever we're in, it's extra hard. So if you have a boat back to something else, you're going to use it. So you got to burn your boats and say, this has to work. The people that have made it work had no other option. That would be advice number 1. And advice number 2 is, you will be so happy that you started now in a recessionary type time, because you have to build all the good habits. You're actually going to know how to fish because the people that started in 2021, they think the fish just jump in the boat, and it's not true. So I think right now is the perfect time to start and just burn your boats and just know it's going to be tough.
Same question, but for experienced recruiters. What are some of the pieces of advice that you would give to them to hit success and see success?
Never stop marketing. Realize that you're in a comfort zone. Everybody listening is in a comfort zone. But if you realize you're in a comfort zone, in Legacy, the book that I wrote, it talks about it. There's this character that tries to get able to stay in the comfort zone, and it's this soothing, loving voice that says, "Oh, you don't have to keep going. You stay right here." You got to break through that. You got to say no to that voice and continually move forward. And the way to move forward is action. Try something new. Try a new technology. Try using video. Try using these different things, and just break out of that comfort zone would be my advice to experienced people.
Awesome. Now, BD wise, how much time wise do you set aside for BD on a daily and weekly basis?
It kind of varies, but what I try to do is have as many searches that would also be a marketing call. Okay. So that I'm always marketing because I'm searching on this regional director position or this VP search. And when I'm on the phone with a single burger, an individual contributor, I try to find out, I ask this question a lot, just so I better understand like what you like, what you don't like what are some of the companies you've interviewed with recently that you didn't like? What are some of the ones you did like? And I just start writing down these companies so then I can market to them. So even if I'm on a recruiting call on an individual level, I'm always in the marketing mindset. My default setting is marketing. A lot of people in this business, their default setting is recruiting. And they have to switch the default setting to get into marketing. For me, I'm always marketing. And even if I'm recruiting.
I love that. Is there a book that has had a huge impact on your career?
The very, very biggest one is the Bible. I read the Bible every morning. I'm not a Bible thumper. If that's not your thing, that's fine. But for me, it's been the most important book I've read. Secondarily, The Go-Giver is a great book. Legacy, The Saga Begins is another one you should check out. No. And there's another one. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, I'll have the link for that book in the show notes if you want to check out Michael's book.
Oh, thanks a lot. Well, the other one it's going to sound like a bad book, but it's actually awesome. It's called Getting Naked. There's no pictures in it. So, Getting Naked is just about going in, being a consultant and just going in with no walls up. You're going in there totally exposed, totally vulnerable. That's what that's about. Those two books, the Bible and Legacy, The Saga Begins, are the ones I would recommend.
So with you being year after year consistent big biller, and you're seeing this influx of new technology, AI, how do you think it's going to impact the future of recruiting?
I think AI is going to be a huge impact. I hate to say it because I don't like it. I think it's just like anything, though. I think it's like, when they used to use note cards and then they had a database and then there was the internet and then there was monster.com and then there's LinkedIn and then, these things you have to get better. You have to use it better than the talent acquisition group that's out there. So for me, I want to learn about AI. I don't want to pretend it doesn't exist. I want to get better at it faster because talent acquisition is going to want to use it like they use LinkedIn. But I do have a fear about AI is that if every recruiter started feeding their resumes to this AI machine so that they can spit out write-ups about the candidate, well, then what would stop in 20 years, 10 years, 5 years, whatever the time period is, asking the machine, I need somebody with this, this, and this. Who do you got? And it could spit out the candidates because it only knows what we feed it. So I just would hesitate to do that, I guess.
That's great.
Yeah. Yeah.
So is there something that has been a major part of you being successful?
Again, I would say applying Bible principles. It sounds cheesy, but when when you do unto others as you would want have done to you, it's so differentiating. When you look at this business not as a transaction, but relationship building, and when you look at yourself not as a person trying to make a transaction, but a true fiduciary that is going to do what's in the other person's best interest, and your clients know that you're going to do what's in their best interest, and your candidates know you're going to do what's in their best interest, they're always going to come back to you and they're going to refer you. And it's so differentiating because the people that are attracted to this business are the ones interested in a quick buck, that are transactional, that aren't in it for the long haul. So, and that's all the more reason to niche, because when you don't niche and you're talking to people on the phone and they're not a fit for your job, you want to get off the phone as quickly as possible. But even if in my world, even if someone is not interested in that job or not interested right now, building that relationship is inventory for later. So it allows me to recruit in such a way where the relationship is the very first important thing. So I would say if you do that, you will have long-term success, but it does take a while to build up that.
So there's a rule or a study or something of that nature where you are the person that your five closest friends with and the books that you
Oh,
read.
yeah.
Now, I know you are around a very successful group of other recruiters. Has that had an impact on your success?
Absolutely. Absolutely. What I find is that they're saying things that I say. I'm saying things that they say. We kind of parrot each other a lot. Our PDA, our per desk average in 2021 was like 721. So each person was just killing it, you know. And so, yeah, when you're around high performers, but I'm also part of the Pinnacle Society.
That's what I was
The
getting to.
deal. Yeah, the elite group of, whenever I go there and rub elbows and hear what they're doing and hear ideas being shared and hear the numbers they're putting up, it's sort of like playing up when you're like a 12-year-old and you get to play with the 14-year-olds. It's a big gap, big difference. But if you get to play up, you become better than all the other 12-year-olds, even though you can take your lumps with the 14-year-olds. So being surrounding myself with great people and then also being in the Pinnacle Society has really leveled up my game for sure.
Awesome. And this is actually one of my favorite questions, Michael.
Okay.
Everything that you've experienced, everything that you've gone through, everything that you've learned, if you can go back and talk to yourself at the very start of your recruiting career, your first week getting started, what advice would you give yourself?
I would say go all in. I would say push all the chips in the middle. So what I did initially, before I got the burn the boats thing, I was very work-life balance oriented. And you need to have some balance in your life. I'm not saying that. But I was single. I was, my social life was very important to me, and I was working for a paycheck. That was in 2007, 2008, and 2009. In 2010, I pushed all the chips to the middle. And I said, you know what? I'm going to push as hard as I can for the next 6 quarters. I averaged 4:45 on the phone. I ate all 3 meals at my desk, and I never started a day without being fully prepared. So that means if I got a job order at 5:30 on a Tuesday, I worked until I was ready to hit the ground running on Wednesday. And so I would just tell myself in 2007, man, quit worrying about your social life. Put all your chips in right now, and that's the way to go.
Well, let me ask this question. Like that difference when you decided to put all your chips in, was there a moment that kind of pushed that?
Yeah, so I went from being single to engaged, and my my now wife, we had a long distance relationship. So I was like, all right, not having a social life is actually a protection, so, I'll just work my butt off during the week. And when I see her on the weekends, I'll be free and clear. So for me, that's what it was that I had less of a distraction. But I wish I would have just
Okay.
said, cut out that distraction earlier. Yeah,
Like it's always interesting, like people's inflection point of when they made that decision.
I had two. One was the engagement, and two was when we were expecting our first child. Two big bounce up points for me because there was just, and that's also part of the book. There's this part of the book in Legacy is called Beyond the Finish Line. When what is beyond your finish line is bigger than yourself, you can't fail. You, the fear of failure gets diminished, or the voice of fear, you quiet it because what's beyond the finish line is so important that you can fail. Failing's not an option. You can't fail, right? So those two things that happened to me, there was something beyond the finish line that was just bigger and more important than my social life or work-life balance or all these things. And so those two inflection points were huge because I had something beyond the finish line.
Amazing. Well, give me a second after that because,
Yeah,
real life, really pushes you forward.
that's right.
Well, Michael, before I let you go, is there anything else that you would love to share with the listeners?
I would just say there's another character in the book that I wrote into the book because this person always keeps existing in my life. Sometimes it's me in my own head. Other times it's an individual, and it's the cynic. He's called Cynical Sova. And Sova parades himself as really wise, but he's condescending, rude, and cynical. And we have to guard against being that cynical person to someone else. And this is what it looks like. Oh, don't call that company, they don't use recruiters. Or don't call that candidate, they never called me back, so they're never going to. And we're telling that to a rookie. And we're imposing our cynicism onto them. But also, when you're working a roll-up list and you start talking yourself out of calling someone, well, they're probably not that interested. And, don't be the cynic in your own head. Fight through those things and you'll have more success. So when you're reading Legacy, just know that every character is a character you're going to meet along your recruiting journey and whatever entrepreneurial journey, if you have a side hustle or whether you're entering a new phase of life, whether it be empty nesting or, dealing with a health issue, though all those things can be a dark wilderness. But you can navigate it by really just moving forward in the face of fear. One last thing, the motto, the main theme of Legacy is this phrase my dad used to tell us when we would leave the house. It's be noble. So no matter how much a person bills, no matter what niche you choose, no matter what you do, if you do this business with nobility, if you're being noble, success will always follow you.
I love that. Well, Michael, this has been a phenomenal interview.
Okay.
I'm excited that you came on. First of all, one, I'm actually going to go buy the book. So,
Nice. Thank you.
secondly, one of the biggest things that I've learned from a lot of like the big billers and other strong people in this industry, they constantly give back to the entire community. Like they want to help level up the entire community, and I absolutely love that about the recruiting space and the recruiting community. So thank you, Michael, for coming on.
My great pleasure. Thanks for the invite.
And for the listeners, until next time, guys. So there's a lot of recruiters that have been in the game for a long time. Like myself, I'm coming up on actually 2 decades. What advice would you give to recruiters to have continued success?
Yeah, I love that question. I would say be humble. I know everybody says be adaptable and learn new things. I do agree with that. But for me, it's like I've been in it now 8 months on my own, 9 months, and I'm realizing every day it's about gratitude. I think being grateful. I think if you've been in this a long time, it just becomes second nature. If you just like crush it every year, or like you have your ups and downs, you just get caught up in the kind of hamster wheel of it. But hopefully you can take a step back and realize how awesome this industry is and how unique it is to have the opportunity to do what you do every day. I think if you've been at it for a while, you might lose that. So whether that's, you go for a walk and you reflect on stuff, you do an offsite to yourself and just think and plan and stuff. You gotta pull yourself out of the weeds sometimes and just realize how awesome this is. Like not every sector in business has the opportunity to do what we do, whether you're an entrepreneur starting something or you're part of a firm that's growing and you're killing it and making a difference on people's lives and companies that you serve and work with and helping them think through challenges. Like it's a great industry. And so I would just say reflect on stuff, push pause, and think about how lucky you are that you're in the kind of spot that you're in.
Awesome. Great advice. Has there been a book that's had a huge impact on your entire career?
Yeah. Funny with the chapter thing, I started reading a whole lot more in the past few years. So some that come to mind, some of the timeless ones like Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich, I think those are just timeless books. Some of the more tactical stuff like Atomic Habits, everybody talks about that. I love that book. Miracle Morning, actually by Hal Elrod. I don't follow the Miracle Morning kind of thing exactly right, but when I read that, it got me thinking, and now I'm up at 5 a.m. every day. I have exactly the same morning routine every day. And it made a huge difference with how I set the day and like plan what I'm going to do and get the energy, exercise, read. So really that book was cool. It got me thinking like, wow, like if I just get up before my kids get up, before I hear dad, I need at least an hour, preferably an hour and a half before I hear the word dad. And I love my kids, but I need that time in the morning, and that Miracle Morning book got me to create that morning routine that's really helped me out a lot.
I love that. You mentioned a Man's Search for Meaning. That's the book where he survived the Holocaust, right?
Yeah, it's just an unbelievable story of how you can cope with and thrive through like unimaginable like suffering that everybody went through that. So it's broken up into two parts. Part one is just his sort of story of what he went through, and then part two is more of like his he calls it logotherapy, about how he views like finding meaning in life. It's super deep, it's super powerful. It just got you thinking like, oh my God, can you imagine what the suffering that people have gone through, and puts in perspective like some of the stuff that sets people off these days and gets you frustrated. I'm like, well, can you imagine that? And so it helps just sort of ground you a little bit and keeps things in perspective around like gratitude and stuff for what you have.
Awesome. Is there a favorite tech tool that you love right now?
Can you do plural tools, or does it have to be
go
two?
ahead.
Because my team knows I love this stuff, and I gotta be reeled in sometimes chasing stuff. I think you're probably the same way. I've pinged you a couple times on LinkedIn. Hey, have you heard of this? But I'd say start with non-recruiting stuff. I love Superhuman for email. It's crazy. I think it's 25, $30 a month on an email client, but I'm in email a lot. It's super fast. It's about zero inbox and stuff. So really, really cool email client that sits on top of Outlook or Gmail. I like Evernote. I'm always capturing ideas and stuff, so using Evernote quite a bit. On the recruiting side, tried every ATS and CRM in the world. I think we land on Crelate, and I love Crelate. I think it's awesome, super powerful tool. Source Whale for automation is really cool and helps scale outreach, personalized. Starting to dabble like Dripify for some LinkedIn outreach and stuff. So always kind of messing around with what's out there. But I think we're at a point like, all right, we want to have the best tools in the industry, build that platform, and then just scale. So I'm trying to hold myself accountable to that.
Awesome.
But it's hard.
So what are your thoughts on the future of recruiting and artificial intelligence?
Yeah, I mean, I know it's a hot topic. I have not wrapped my arms around quite AI yet. Like I'm kind of like observing, trying out different use cases with chat and stuff, but I don't know. I mean, I just hope that it doesn't water down the industry. And, I just think of my own focus and the kind of talent that we go after. If I were to ask ChatGPT to write me a email sequence and I just copied and pasted that and threw it in an outreach tool, I would get 0% replies. Literally zero. I don't think a single person would reply because I need that human element. It has to be personalized. I have to show that I've done a ton of research. I know who you are. We should know each other. Here's why. But that can't come through in AI. Maybe some AI expert would challenge me and say, no, you got to input it the right way. And yeah, I don't know if I'd have that debate. Because I just, for me, it's like I just love the human element and the relationship aspect of recruiting. It's why, going back to why I started and found this path, it just fits me and my style. So I guess my hope is that doesn't, ever get diminished. You find little pockets where it can add efficiency, and that could be transcribing notes. It could be, little things here and there. But, if you're just pushing out content or writing blogs through chat, I don't know. For me, that just doesn't necessarily jive. But I'm also sort of the observer mode right now. I'm not all in on it yet. I'm kind of feeling it out and seeing what other people are doing, trying to learn from others, and then take maybe what works for me. But again, there's no prescription of like, hey, you got to do it this way. I know there's probably people who kill it using it, and I'm just not quite there yet. And again, it's the beauty of the industry. You do what works for you, what fits your style, what fits your audience, and that's that should be what you follow.
Is there anything that you can attribute to you reaching your success and where you're at today?
Yeah, I mean, I've said it so many times. I think it's such a relationship industry. I mean, I'm so grateful for the relationships I've built over the years that trust me, believe in me. So it's at the core. It's that. I mean, I think if you're a transactional person who's kind of popping in and out of different clients, trying to get some opportunities and fill some jobs and rolling on, can you get there doing that? Yeah, but it's going to take a whole lot of more grinding and reps and stuff. But if you focus on being a real advisor and a consultant and a extension of their business, that's what we do. I mean, we want to represent our clients at the highest level in the market, and they got to trust me, and that starts with a relationship. It doesn't happen from a cold email and one discovery call and saying, all right, let's do this. I mean, these are people I've known for a long time. So it takes time. I think, people starting out, like, you got to plan, you got to really vet, who do I know? Who would take a call from me? Can I get their trust and their commitment to say, hey, if I start this, would you be my first client? Like, I had that conversation and it turned out to be my first client. But I had that proactively because I wanted to say, like, all right, if I'm going to do this and I've got all this at risk, what can I control to my best of my abilities to at least get a shot at success? And so it all just starts with relationships. It's been kind of the theme of this call, but that's what it's all about for me.
Awesome. And this is actually one of my favorite questions. Like everything that you've learned, everything you've done, you've experienced, if you can go back and talk to Pat at the very beginning of his career, what would you tell yourself?
Yeah, I love that question too. It would be to trust the journey, trust the process, that everything that's happening around you is leading you somewhere. Because when I got into staffing, went up to Chicago, we did some great work. We expanded the team. I was doing deals, making placements, helping others. And I got let go. And I was not, at the time, I was like, I'm not that guy. How did this happen? And so is at a moment in my life where I'm like, oh my gosh, how do I rebound from this? And then it was a sequence of events that if they didn't happen, I wouldn't be talking to you. I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing. And so a company believed in me, relocated me back to St. Louis. So I had the opportunity, had a really fast start, ended up getting into leadership with them and into kind of a player coach role. That was the opportunity for me to get back to St. Louis, where that's home. So that was a massive deal. If it wasn't for them saying, hey, we believe in you, we think you can be a great addition to our St. Louis team, get you back home, I maybe would still be in Chicago, kind of grinding it out and doing who knows what. But they brought me to St. Louis. And then I got a call from a headhunter about my previous role, about the opportunity. If I didn't take that call, I wouldn't be here. But I luckily took the call, and they caught me at the right time and had a really awesome opportunity. I was in the business insurance world. I met those guys for like 6 to 8 months and met some unbelievable people, had incredible mentors, people that I just had the highest level of respect for. But I dial it back to, if I didn't pick up that call, that simple call, if they didn't call me, if they didn't see my LinkedIn profile, would they have even known who I was? And now the owner of that search firm is a good friend of mine. We share ideas and stuff. And then, so it's just like, you kind of get punched in the nose sometimes and stuff happens and you're like, well, that sucks. But I just believe in everything happens for a reason. You got to just sort of trust it. And you got to just be aware of people around you, situations that are popping up, experiences, and saying, what can I take from that? How can I learn from that? How can this person help me? How can I rebound from this bit of adversity that comes your way? Because there are times that were sort of dark where I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do now. But, fast forward a decade later and in a great chapter that I'm having the best time of my professional career. But it's all the steps that it took to get there. Didn't happen overnight.
I love how sometimes life can change with a simple call or a simple conversation.
Right. It's the book somebody mentioned on one of your podcasts, Ed Milet, The Power of One More. Like, I love his story of his dad was an alcoholic and got sober by just one guy at a bar helping him out. And I think there's so much to that. It's just, there's little situations that pop up here and there. It could be a call, it could be a meeting, it could be your next client. You might bump into them at a coffee shop, and there you go. Like, or that person might encourage you to go take a risk and do something. But if you're just not aware of who's around you and what's happening, I think you miss out.
Awesome. Well, Pat, before I let you go, is there anything else that you'd love to share with the listeners?
I don't think so. We covered so much. And again, thanks so much for this platform and for doing what you're doing. If anybody wants some wisdom or wants to pick my brain, connect me on LinkedIn. If you're considering starting it up, I was in your shoes and probably were thinking all the same things you're thinking. So happy to share some ideas and connect if that adds value. So want to try to give back just like you do. So thanks for all you do.
Thank you. Well, thank you for coming on. I love the conversation that, you were able to share. It just, so many people like deal with the, should I say, stay solo? Should I grow? Should I start my own firm? Should I make that leap? Or, even like I got laid off and you talked about how your life changed and going to back to St. Louis. So many people are going through those exact same circumstances. So I'm so glad that you're able to share, Pat, with the podcast.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Happy to do that. So thanks for the time.
Awesome. And for the listeners, until next time.